Hey guys, welcome back to Loudmouth Fisticuffs, episode number 8. That's episode 8, the Ocho. Being the Ocho, it's an ode to that in case you're a dodgeball. Anyways, I am Josh First from CombatInsiders.com. My man over there, Mr. Loud Worldwide, Mr. Jeff Houston. What's going on, Mr. Jeff?
Oh, Josh, same old, same old. I mean, I've been watching you on the Ocho, ESPN 8.
I love that movie, man, that like where he's like, oh my God.
Lance Armstrong? Yeah, that's me. And I've been watching you on the Ocho, ESPN 8. And I love how he did the drop afterwards. But the damnedest thing is that there is an Ocho now.
It is, yeah. There
is of the damnedest thing. I mean, seriously, what was started as a joke has now molded to reality. There is an ESPN 8, the Ocho, and they do show some of the stupidest freaking sports or claims to sports that there is on television. I'm like, but I think honestly for now, that's a great idea. It's a wonderful idea. What's wrong with showing the obscurity of sports? Everything else, the obscurity of almost every form of entertainment is on display in some way. Why can't we see the armpits of sports?
Yeah, I agree. I wonder if there's some type of like intellectual property royalties, from that. I don't know. I'd be curious to know that people at ESPN was like watching that and they're like, "No, wait a minute."
Yeah, I don't know about intellectual. ESPN 8, the Ocho, I don't think that intellectual kind of works with the Ocho. I think it's actually the absence of intellectual property. Yep.
Guys, we've had a whole lot going on the last couple of days. So, in case you live under a rock, you know that UFC 249 is
a go.
It's a go. It's going on as planned. We still don't know where. We've heard some rumors, maybe like a Indian casino or something like that, but nothing's official. Anyway, the full
actually yes it is.
Right?
Actually yes it is. It's going to be at the Tachi Palace.
Is that official now? Did they officially? Okay,
that is official.
And they have the full lineup. We got UFC Island. Everybody's kind of joking about it, but it's something very serious that they're talking about. We're going to talk about a few things just kind of going on in the combat sports world, even though whole lot isn't going on, but there has been a couple some developments this past week, so we're thankful for it. I guess, man, we'll just jump right into UFC 249, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dana White has been teasing us for probably the better part of a week, and there was all the talk of Khabib not being able to make it. He went back to Russia, blah blah blah, and he wasn't able to get out, blah blah blah, because of the whole coronavirus travel restrictions. And we had no clue. There was talk about, it's going to be over in Abu Dhabi. It could be in Russia. It could be here. It could be there. And nobody knew anything. It was locked up. Dana White was just his mouth was locked up. We didn't hear anything. The fighters weren't talking. And then he did an interview, and he's like, I'm going to announce UFC 249 tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And then, boom, dropped it on us.
Why Abu Dhabi? I mean, Abu Dhabi, isn't that where the cute kittens go? I mean, don't you remember Garfield? Isn't that where Garfield always tried to mail Nermal to? Abu Dhabi?
Was it?
It was. He was always trying to mail Nermal to Abu Dhabi. And I don't know what they do with cats over there, but, he was always thrilled about mailing Nermal to Abu Dhabi. Now Nermal would probably take it as a blessing because Abu Dhabi's pretty badass right now.
Aren't they the, just sidebar, aren't they the richest per square capita? The richest?
In between Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Oh, yeah.
Dubai. Maybe that's what I'm thinking, Dubai. I'm thinking Dubai.
No, I think Abu Dhabi's actually richer than Abu Dhabi's richer than Dubai.
Okay.
I would actually think so. Dubai has just got a lot of amazing flash, a lot of cool stuff in Dubai.
Yeah.
That's where you see the Ferraris driving around with a cheetah in the front. Tiger King shit. That's where you see the gold bar vending machines, the Lamborghini and the Bentley cop cars, and my favorite, especially when I was in downtown Dubai, the robot police officers.
Yeah.
Top part robot, bottom half kind of like a Segway. Very, very nice the dictation on them, the speaking mechanism was just so like, "Hello, citizen, and welcome to downtown Dubai. How may I service you?" Felt like I was talking to HAL 9000 from 2001: A Space Odyssey. It was creepy.
Maybe they should use you as the voice for that, Jeff.
I'm afraid I can't do that, Josh.
So, I guess let's just touch base on this card a little bit, man.
I'm so excited for the main, man. In fact, I actually called that main. I kind of figured that Justin Gaethje would be dancing with Tony Ferguson, and it is, of course, going to be for the interim lightweight title, which is a great segue into the fight with Khabib, because then, you know, Tony Ferguson gets the W on this, and then we can have a definite winner and a definite overall, you know, undisputed, undefeated champion in that sense. And I think that that's awesome. That's going to be a good fight. It's not as big money as Khabib, but it's still going to be a good fight.
Yeah, I mean, I knew because there was a few guys stepping forward. There was, you know, Justin and I think Poirier and I think even Masvidal offered up his services.
Oh, well, yeah, he wanted to fight too.
I figured Justin probably had the best chance considering, you know, him and Khabib have the same manager, Ali. So I kind of thought he'd probably be able to just.
Good old Ali. Smart man, I will tell you that. But boy, is he quagmired down in controversy. That is for sure. But Justin, of course, was, you know, for the longest time the saving grace of WSOF,
right?
Yeah, and PFL.
Yeah,
and PFL definitely made his money and definitely made his mark over there. And now he's where he belongs. Hopefully, he's not too battle damaged from everything that he's done with World Series of Fighting and PFL to make a statement and a good statement over here in the UFC.
You know, I actually think, and I know this might sound crazy, Jeff, I think Gaethje is a worse fight for Tony than Khabib was. And I'll explain.
I need the explanation. I have to have it.
So we've all seen Justin's battles, and the two people who have done the best against him lately was Poirier and Eddie, right?
Yep. Hey, Alvarez.
Poirier. So, and they figured out the game plan. They figured out, you know, to the counter game to him, and that you couldn't just bum rush Justin Gaethje. You can't just go in and take bombs from him because he puts everything he has into almost every shot, right?
Of course.
He's not the most technical, but he's in your face. He has great cardio.
He's aggressive as fuck.
He's aggressive. His pace is he keeps that same pace the whole time. So he's a different kind of animal. And I think with Tony, I don't know if Tony has the patience that a Poirier or an Alvarez does. I don't know if he has that. I mean, maybe he does. You know, maybe he's going to go in there and play the counter game with him, but I just don't see Tony changing up his game plan. Tony's always been in your face too, and, you know, throwing elbows and throwing bombs and stuff like that. Just awkward, unorthodox stuff anyway. I think it's an interesting fight for him. And I think Justin may be a tougher challenge for him than Khabib. And we talked about, I think we touched on this before, was that I think Tony Ferguson was a tough challenge for Khabib in the sense of the ground game. I don't think is going to intimidate him. He's going to be a little more comfortable than most people are in the bottom. He's used to slicing people up from the bottom, and he's got a crazy submission game. So I don't think, not to say Khabib won't take him down. I'm not saying that.
Khabib won't be able to. I don't think Khabib is gonna cut right through him. That's the thing. I don't think he's going to cut through Tony on the ground as he does. I mean, he goes through people on the ground like a hot Ginsu knife through butter.
Well, because most people he knows that he can.
He drives too. On top of that, some people in their ground game are boring, but he loves to drive forward. Correct. He loves to push forward, and he tries to get your ass up against the cage.
Right. Exactly.
You know, he doesn't want to keep you in the center.
Exactly.
He wants to push your ass up against the cage, and he wants that leverage advantage, exactly. which he totally gets. I mean, look at his fights. He's always pushed your ass up against the cage at an awkward angle, which benefits him so that you can't fight back as much. And it's a great, and the way to neutralize that is to keep him in the center.
Correct. Yeah. Agree. And you know what? You know who did a great job of that was Ally Aquinta. He did a good job of keeping him in the middle.
He did.
But back to my point, that's why I think Justin is actually a tougher fight for Tony than Khabib was. It's a completely different fucking fight, first off, which obviously, but it's just, I don't know, man. I think Justin is going to give Tony some problems.
Oh, I know he is.
I'm not saying 100% that Justin's going to beat him. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that Justin's going to present some problems that I don't think Tony is used to having, because Tony's not used to fighting people who are, pardon the French, just as fucking crazy as he is in the octagon. And I think Justin he's just as has that same kind of savage mentality, right? And I think that's something he's not used to, with maybe the exception of, when he fought Pettis, right? Pettis kind of had that savage mentality, and Pettis was all about it. Of course, Tony still won, but Pettis was all about
of course it. Tony is a different animal, because how many times have you seen Tony Ferguson's opponents completely covered in blood? Tony is notorious for getting you showing color,
right?
And it doesn't bother him. And anytime that you've got a opponent that doesn't mind being drenched in his opponent's blood, in fact, he sees it kind of like a badge of honor. Kind of reminds me of like what Brock Lesnar does. It's these guys who have the rotten luck of being born in the wrong century.
Yeah.
Tony Ferguson is one of those guys who should have been a gladiator. He should have been on some ancient battlefield swinging an axe into someone's face. Same thing like Brock Lesnar. Same thing like War Machine. Some of these guys were just, they're great fighters, but I think that their main purpose in life was to end lives. And I think Tony Ferguson is definitely one of those. I mean, honestly, Tony Ferguson, I think he'd be a better hitman overall than a fighter. Seriously, man. I could see Tony Ferguson. He even has the look. But, of course, when it comes to messing with people on the spot, there's an old saying. If you feel that you're about to get into a fight with a stranger and that motherfucker's got cauliflower ears, rethink what you're doing.
Yeah.
Rethink what you're doing. Because if you see cauliflower ears, chances are you're going to get your ass handed to you, and you'll have to be picked off of the pavement with a spatula. You know what I mean? Some people, I just get that, because some people are just natural fighters, and Tony's another guy who doesn't give a fuck. He's another guy who says, I will fight anybody, and I mean that.
Yeah.
So he's not he's upset that he couldn't fight Khabib because, of all the effort and time. And now that this is the 6th time, and yes, it is now the 6th time that they've tried to make that happen. Before they were saying, Christopher was saying it was the 5th time. No, it is the 6th time that this has actually now hit the floor. And of course he's upset about that. But if he gets an opportunity to fight someone, and not only that, he gets to fight someone at the most unique time in our collective lives.
Yeah.
The most unique time that we've experienced as a world right now. So he's excited. And I know that Justin was actually saying that he was a little terrified about fighting, but he loved it. He actually, in an interview, he was like, I'm actually terrified to fight right now, but I love that sensation. I love being terrified. It just ups the ante that much more for the fight. And he's absolutely right. And you gotta love Dana for scrambling as much as he has. Seriously, man. People have got to really give it to him, because no other fight promoter in the world right now is scrambling as much as him to make this fucking happen. And I love it. And I'm so happy for him. I'm not going to go too far off topic, but I am going to say a few things about this card, because I am excited that a few of my fellow Texans are going to be representing UFC 249. One in particular is my boy Alexander the Great Hernandez. He is on the card, and a lot of people may remember Alexander when he was talking all kinds of crazy shit trying to beat Donald Cerrone.
Yep.
And he was really getting into his face, and I was really excited for that fight. I don't think he bit off a little bit more than he could chew. I don't know what happened with Alex, because I have announced a very big majority of Alex's fights back in the independents, back on the lot of the house shows and a lot of the regional events. So I know what a beast he is, and he's definitely going to be one of those lightweights to contend with. He just got into the UFC so quickly, and he's already had, what, 1, 2, 3. This will be his 5th fight. And he's got a good UFC record right now. I mean, he's currently 3-1. He's 3-1 in the UFC. And, you know, it's a decent fight that's coming up. I think that he'll probably pick up the W. He's going against Antonio Morales Ferrer. So it's not a horrible fight. It's on the prelim card, so I definitely give him credit for that. I'm looking forward to that. And then on the prelim card, the starting off fight of the night, I still don't know why he has the starting off fight. My boy Ryan Superman Spann, he's going to be fighting Sam Alvey on and that's going to be the curtain jerker for the night. And I've got an interesting story about Ryan that I'd like to share with you right now.
Do tell.
Ryan was fighting for a regional promotion back in the day called Hero FC down in the Valley. And Hero FC was having a tournament in individual weight classes. And in the light heavyweight division, there was a tournament, and it was a $50,000 tournament, which for a regional promotion is amazing, because not too many regional promotions put up that kind of cash. And it was backed by Charlie Clark Nissan, which down in the Rio Grande Valley is the is basically the auto dealership brand of the Rio Grande Valley. Anybody who's down in the valley knows Charlie Clark, that's for sure. So he was the money man behind that. And Ryan was the kind of guy who got very emotional after a win. Very emotional. Like, he'd let his emotions just overrun him. And I remember we were doing an outdoor show in a minor league baseball stadium. And it was the final match. And unfortunately, they didn't think some things through, because we were outdoors. It was probably either June or July, and the cage floor was a slick vinyl. So it was a slip and slide all fucking night. I really think people need to go back to the grainy canvas when they go outside, because at least the grainy canvas will grip your foot when you're trying to do something. If you're trying to negotiate a takedown, or you're in the clinch and you're putting a lot of pressure on your opponent, man, you're going to slip around, hurt somebody. And we actually had an injury.
Well, sidebar, I've actually I've wrestled on slick vinyl canvas outside before in the middle of the summer, and it was not only is it slippery, but you're on the ground on that. It's fucking hot.
It is.
It just soaks up the heat. Yeah, I mean, canvas.
Well, and if you get taken down on top of that, and God forbid you're sweaty, which in July and the Rio Grande Valley you definitely are. Yeah. Oh man, it's just so uncomfortable. But he won his fight, and he was so emotional that he started hyperventilating, and he had to be put on oxygen. And he won the fight. They had to bring oxygen in and calm him down before I could announce him and the check presentation. We had to wait 20 minutes for him to get back, to get himself leveled out, because he was hyperventilating. He was on oxygen. I'm like, dude, this is the first time that I've ever seen the winner of a fight be put on oxygen. But he was just his emotions were just overrun. He finally calmed himself down. We made the official decision. We presented him with the big check and all that good stuff. And I knew even then that this guy had something special. He's 6'5", so he's automatically, he's a big guy, right, lean guy, and he's a good overall fighter. His takedown is great, but he is an incredible striker. And I knew eventually he was going to make it. And he was the former LFA light heavyweight champion, Ryan Spann. So, and as you know, LFA was and still is the main feeder league for the UFC. Yep. So he ended up, getting into the UFC, and he's been doing really good there. I'm a little disappointed that he's the first fight on the card, and that's the prelim, but he's still part of one of the most unique, groundbreaking shows in the history of the UFC, And I'm sure he's pretty happy about that. But I just wanted to give a shout out to Ryan Spann and Alexander the Great Hernandez. Way to represent Texas on this very, very unique card that you'll probably remember for the rest of your life, because I guarantee for these two, it's their first closed door event.
Yeah, Ryan Spann, Sam Alvey's from Texas too, isn't he? Isn't he originally from Texas?
I think he's originally from Texas.
I mean, I know he lives in California now, but I thought Sam Alvey was originally from Texas. I could be wrong on that.
No, he was originally from Wisconsin.
Oh, that's right. He's a Midwest guy. Okay.
No, he lives in Murrieta. He lives in Murrieta right now in California. But no, he's not a. Oh, and another one that I want to give a shout out to that was a very controversial fighter. Do you remember a very badass fighter by the name of Sijara Eubanks?
I sure do.
Yeah, she's on the card. I announced her a couple of times in International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu World Championships. Because she's a badass. She was a brown belt at the time, but now, of course, she's a black belt in BJJ. And she was getting ready to fight Valentina Shevchenko. And she got a lot of controversy about that because, she was just all of a sudden thrown into that title fight. And what happened is that she was going to go ahead and fight Valentina Shevchenko for the flyweight title, and it was for the vacant at the time. It was the vacant at the time at UFC 230, but apparently the fight was canceled on October 9th after they announced that Daniel Cormier and Derek Lewis would main event that instead, and that they'd return her to the original bout for the vacant title against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Now, Eubanks was still on the card, but she was on a lower part, and she's just like, what the fuck? I was just getting an opportunity for the vacant flyweight title, and now I'm getting bumped down because of these two. She was pissed, and rightly so. She got bumped. She got bumped very unceremoniously. But you know what? She took it. She's still taking it with a grain of salt. She's back on the fight cards. I mean, the UFC is still utilizing her, and she's another one that I think that is a Brazilian jiu-jitsu savant that is making her transition into full-time MMA, and she's going to be another one to be on the lookout for. She's a badass.
No, yeah, no doubt. I tell you what, just from her, like the way she comes off, her persona, man, and she has a persona. Oh,
she's a beast.
Yeah.
She's not much of a talker, man. She just goes out there and does it.
I tell you what though, but that's I've always liked her because whenever I see her on a card, man, you at least know that win, lose or draw, she's gonna fucking go out there and at least try to beat someone's ass.
Oh yeah. She's not going out there to take anything or anyone lightly. Not at all. No, she's out there to earn her money and to make a stamp.
Yeah, I like her, man. I think she's a good draw.
Oh, you should see her. You should see her on the mat. You should see her on the mat, man. I'm still amazed that she's not part of the ADCC World Championships. She's incredible. She's incredible on the mat, man. She's got one hell of a grappling record on top of that. So she is she's pretty badass, man. And she was also under a lot of controversy because she's also an openly lesbian athlete. On top of that, so she got a lot of crap for that. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I thought we were past that.
Yeah, who really cared? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
And she ended up having a couple of good fights against Aspen Ladd.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, she had a fight of the night. What was it? May 18th, fight night 152. She fought Aspen Ladd, and she lost by unanimous decision, but it was a fight of the night award that she got, which eventually is going to propel you to where you need to be. But if you look at her last record, I mean, she's lost to Chukagian, which, as we know, is a legitimate fighter. Chukagian recently fought against Shevchenko.
Yep.
And her two losses to Aspen Ladd, and most recent loss in September to Bethe Correia.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I forgot about that fight.
Yeah. But in all of her losses, she's never been knocked out.
Yeah.
She's never been knocked out. She's never been tapped. Every loss that she's had has been unanimous decision. So she's never been knocked out. She's a tough girl. She's a tough girl. You're gonna have to make a Herculean effort to knock her out.
Then we also got there's Uriah Hall versus Jacare.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
That'll be interesting, right? Because like Uriah Hall is all like his last few fights. I know his last fight he turned it up, but you know the guy came from Ultimate Fighter, and he was like when he was coming from that show, man, it was like everybody was like, "Oh, he's the next Anderson Silva." Like, you do remember that when they were like, "He's the next Anderson Silva. He's going to be this and that," and he was fucking knocking people out.
I love Ronaldo, man. He's badass.
Oh yeah, Jacare too. And
oh no, Jacare.
Have I been saying it wrong this whole time?
You've been saying a lot of things wrong this whole time. This isn't the first time that we've explored this scenario. So
everybody says Jacare.
No, Jacare.
I've never heard someone say. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying nobody says that. Everybody says Jacare.
Well, then everyone's saying it wrong. Everyone's saying it wrong. Then it's too bad that he couldn't make the World Championship for ADCC this year. I was hoping that he would. You know, I mean, because you know he's a two-time world champion. He's a two-time world champion from the ADCCs and the World Jiu-Jitsu Championships. Forget about it. The man fucking cleaned up from 2001 to 2005. The guy is a grappling machine. And the one thing that I like about Jacare is that he can really fucking strike. He can really strike. But I mean, his bones of what he does is BJJ, judo, Muay Thai, and submission wrestling. That's the bones of his game.
Then we got Ngannou and Rosenstruck,
which is weird because they're topping off the preliminary card.
But but you know what? A lot of people look at that and be like, "Oh my God, they're on the prelims." But that's actually not a bad spot. So they're the main event of the prelims on. So they're going to be on ESPN or ESPN Plus. I forgot which one, but
that'll be ESPN.
Okay, that would be on ESPN.
That'll be ESPN.
I don't see that as a bad spot. A lot of people say, well, fuck, man, that should be on the main card. Like, obviously, you want to be on the main card, but being the headline prelim fight.
No, I guess, I mean, if you're going to do it, if you're going to do the prelim, then headline it.
Well, you know, and you know, Dana White has spoken about this several times. A lot of people think it's kind of BS, but I don't think so, man. Like, you want the fight that's leading into the pay-per-view, the one that's going to make people fucking buy it, you want it to be a damn good fight. You know, putting whoever's in that position, you don't want to put a snooze fest right there, right? So you're going to put two people that are going to bring it. And
Rosenstruck will definitely bring it. Oh my good Lord. You want to talk about a motherfucker with a kickboxing record? Ooh, man, 85 fucking fights under his belt as a kickboxer. Right now, what is he, 10-0 as a MMA fighter? No, he is definitely going to be a threat to Ngannou. But Ngannou's another guy who's never lost by knockout or tap out. He's another guy that is just, you know, and as we all know, his striking documentation is well documented.
You know, it'll be interesting, and I've heard some comparisons. It's going to be another Derek Lewis and Ngannou, but I don't think so because of exactly what you were saying with Rosenstruck. He will press forward the action. He's going to force Ngannou to fight.
Well, also that he's going to be busier in the clinch because he's a fucking kickboxer.
Yeah,
kickboxers are notoriously busier in the clinch, and that's what we're going to see. And I want to see that. I can't stand a clinch where you're just, you know, doing nothing. You're not attempting anything. You're not even trying to get those knees close to your chest so that you can get that knee strike. You know, I also notice a lot of people don't do that. They don't bring their knees high up because when you're throwing those knees in a clinch, man, you should have your knee almost on your chest.
Yeah.
When you throw that, when you're in the fucking clinch, man, you should have that knee right here when you throw that high, because that way, no, that's the safest way to ensure no accidental low blows in the clinch. Because you get that knee closer to your chest, you're going to get more of a midsection or maybe even a strike right here in the sternum.
Yeah, but doesn't that open up? That'll open up for more of a somebody grabbing the leg and possible trip or takedown though, right?
Depends how tight you in are. If you're tighter in, no. If there's more space to where they can reach under, hook the leg, and then go for a sweep one leg takedown, absolutely. But if you're closer in and you have that flexibility to bring that knee up, hit that midsection, no, it's a little harder because it's hard to scoop the leg when you're that fucking close.
Yeah. I could see that. Yeah. I could see that.
And I'd like to see that. And I think honestly, with the pedigree that Rosenstruck has with his kickboxing background, that we might see that if he actually gets him in, because Ngannou's not stupid. He's going to know that it may not be the best idea in the world to get into a competitive clinch with a well-known, world-renowned kickboxer.
And I tell you what, the rest of the main card, it's fucking stacked, bro.
Dude, it's not bad.
Jeremy Stevens, Calvin Kattar, Vicente Luque, Nico Price, Greg Hardy versus the Castro, then of course Andrade versus
good old Greg Hardy, man. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, you know what? And I know a lot of people still give him shit, and okay, it is what it is. I get it, but
he doesn't have a terrible record.
It's not bad. I don't think he's as bad as a lot of people say is. Is he at the top of his game? No, of course not.
No, of course not.
Right?
No. He's a football player.
Right.
He's a football player, man. I mean, and I definite shout out to him for making the transition, because he's a big guy. He's 6'5", 265. I mean, he's a big dude. And he's taken to this well. It's just, unfortunately, he's another one that has to kind of work with his demons, man, because this guy does not work well with significant others.
I'm gonna call it now, Jeff.
Okay.
I think maybe in the next few years, I think Greg Hardy toes the line, man.
You think so?
I think so.
You think that once he washes out from there, that he might do that?
I do. And I think he's still a big enough draw, especially in the the local market down there in Florida. I think it would be a big enough interest to Feldman to scoop him up. I do think so.
I just don't understand these guys when it comes to this domestic violence. Fucking up the people that are supposed to care about you.
Yeah.
If they say shit, I'm going to tell you something. A woman is going to say shit to you. A man is going to say shit to you. I mean, it's going to go back ways. But, if you can't take a woman fucking, drilling your ass verbally, I'm sorry. My wife drills me into the ground every single day. And you know what I do? I brush myself off because, sometimes, honestly, sometimes she's right. Sometimes I'm wrong.
Right.
It can go either way. But the last thing that I want to do, even if she's laying into me, is fucking hit her.
And sometimes it's just nonsense, but it's just the way it is.
You gotta be some kind of a big motherfucking pussy to hit your significant other. Yeah. The only time that I would ever raise my hand to my wife, and I've even told her this, I said the only time I would raise my hand is if she decided to pull, for some reason, and I don't know why she would do it, if she tried to pull a Lorena Bobbitt. If I heard that knife unsheathed from the block in the kitchen, and then I see her coming at me, I say, in that situation, your fucking nose is broken more than a nose can be broken. I'll punch you so damn hard in your snot locker, man, that, you'll never think to unsheath another knife again. But that's the only time that I would ever even consider doing something like that. And obviously that's not going to happen, so I have nothing to worry about. But I think that broken nose would be justified considering the circumstances.
100%, yeah.
Well, there you go. Sure. There you go. I said, if you don't do that, guess what? It's going to be nothing but smooth sailings, and my hands stay in my pockets. No problem there.
Snot locker.
I thought you'd like that.
I've never heard that before.
I thought you'd appreciate that.
So, I'll tell you what, man. I'm fucking pumped for this for UFC 249, man. I'm glad they pulled it together. I'm curious to see what all this stuff he's talking about with
the island,
the fucking island of Dr. Moreau over here, the UFC island that they're you know what it kind of reminds me of, Jeff?
What's that?
I think you know what it reminds me of.
I know. Unfortunately, my phone isn't queued up, so I apologize for that. But what you're talking about is Mortal Kombat.
That's right.
Yes, yes, yes. We have to give it up to Shang Tsung. I mean, Dana White. I mean, I could just even imagine him having that badass leather jacket that fucking Shang Tsung was wearing that. You know, the damnedest thing I actually found out is that I was doing a show with ACA in Moscow, and that actor who played Shang Tsung was front row, and I didn't even know it.
Stop.
I mean, yeah, the guy who played Shang Tsung, he even had a fucking sign because he lives in Moscow.
Really?
So he was at a couple of our ACA fights, and I never even noticed. I kept seeing people walk up to this guy, and he was, much older now, so I didn't recognize him at first. But then I turned around, did a double take. I'm like, oh my fucking God, that's Shang Tsung.
I'd have to get a picture of Shang Tsung.
I unfortunately didn't, and I should have, because a lot of the fighters did. But I can just see Dana White in that leather jacket, hands to the sky. It has begun.
So he's talking about how he has the Indian casino for like 2 months, and then after that, he wants to do this mysterious island and lock it down. I wonder. I'm kind of anxious to see how this works. Like, how does a commission for it work? How will is it? I guess it'll have to be international waters, right? Like, it's not going to be.
It'll be brought to you by the Kohulukai, the Black Dragon Society, to measure fighting skills and spirit of its members.
That's a good commission, man. They have a good commission over there.
That'd be awesome if they started that way. Welcome, warriors of the world. Today, you become part of a tradition that began hundreds of years ago.
Dong.
And you got that. Good. You got the gong. You got the gong part. Yes. The damnedest thing is that I was actually going to announce for the Kumite at one point.
No.
I'm not fucking around on that. I know that sounds like an easy joke that I'm ribbing you. I actually got in touch via email to a representative of the Black Dragon Society, which I'm here to tell you is a very real thing. Is a very real thing.
That whole thing wasn't bullshit?
Well, it was to a degree. The Black Dragon Society does exist, but it's much more hush-hush than you would think. It never took place in Hong Kong. It never that was a Hollywood work. Apparently, it took some place. It was on a much smaller scale and took place somewhere in the Bahamas or Jamaica, is what I was told. But it was because you couldn't talk directly, apparently, to the Black Dragon Society. They had their civilian, and I actually saw some advertising online back in the day that there was going to be a kumite that was going to be held in South Africa. So I got in touch with an email address that I found, and they got back to me. And they said, we are considering you for announcing this particular one. The email itself was very cryptic. It wasn't direct and to the point. It sounded like that they were covering up a whole lot of stuff that they didn't want to tell me right off the bat. And then
be careful talking about this email, Joe.
Oh, I'll be fine, because that's why I'm not getting into it specifically. Okay. I'm not getting into the specifics of the emails, and I never will. But I got an email about 3 weeks later saying that the tournament had been put off, and that they would reach out to me if they decide to, start the tournament, which they never did. And that's when but I was actually being considered for the actual motherfucking kumite. True story.
That's fucking awesome.
It was, man. But that's another reason why I'm not talking about the email in its specifics, because you never know who's listening. And the last thing that I need is a horse head in my bed.
You're gonna get a fucking some type of letter. It's gonna be like old school, like wax stamped. It's gonna be the Black Dragon Society emblem, and you're gonna be like, "Honey, we gotta move."
No, you know what it's gonna be like? It's gonna be something simple, like in the movie Eyes Wide Shut. where it's just a little letter and it basically says, give up all inquiries which are useless. These words are a second warning, and we hope for your sake this will be sufficient. Just a simple little, they don't need to get into specifics. The simpler that it is, the scarier that it is.
We heard you on the Loudmouth Fisticuffs.
Oh my goodness! To our Asian friends of all sorts of nationalities, please forgive my partner in crime, Joshua Furs, for a very bad interpretation of your.
There's no offense meant. It's just all in good fun. All in good fun. I guess, man. Let's we had a pretty cool show. We did a live recap of WrestleMania from this past weekend. And so if you are so inclined, people, if you're listening to this and you're curious about what all our thoughts were, go check it out. It's on Facebook, it's on YouTube. Us and Mr. Christopher James over there, we'll give him a shout out. And we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of good interaction. We had a lot of good feedback. I guess, Jeff, do you want to let's talk about it a little bit? We've had a couple days to kind of let it marinate, right? We talked about it right directly after, so we had it fresh on our brain, heat of the moment kind of thing. We've had a couple days kind of let it marinate. Has your thoughts changed on anything? Has have you taken a couple days and be like, you know what? Maybe this wasn't so good. Maybe that wasn't so good. Maybe this was better.
Well, the funny thing about it is that this WrestleMania shattered more social media records than any other previously. This WrestleMania, it said it was the most social event in WWE history, with more than 13.8 million total social media interactions on Facebook, which was a 57% increase over last year's WrestleMania. And that's, of course, according to Nielsen Social. And as of right now, it's saying that there were more than 967 million video views across both the digital and social platforms. And that's including WWE Network, WWE.com, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. Over 20% of an increase over year. So Think about it. Well, and there's a reason for that. People were at fucking home. So of course, so obviously there's going to be more of an increase of social media presence, because that's what people really only have an opportunity to have as of right now, our social media experiences. But it did better than I thought it would. I think it blew WrestleMania 35 out of the water as far as effort.
Yeah, I agree.
I do. There were some Hollywood moments in it, and it looks like that, which is what Vince, in my opinion, has wanted to do all along. I mean, he even said so during the Beyond the Mat, on the Beyond the Mat documentary. Don't you remember what he said? The first thing he said, he was like, "We make movies.
We want to show people what we're really about. We make movies.
We make movies." I mean, hence WWE Studios and all the WWE produced movies. Yeah. This is eventually the way that he wanted. But like, for example, the two movies, that stood out, which were the two movie matches, of course, was the Boneyard match between Taker and AJ Styles. And then, of course, the Firefly Funhouse match between The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, and John Cena. I actually watched the Boneyard match again. I rewatched that to kind of get to see exactly how I felt about it. I'm actually very happy. I'm very happy that I watched it a second time, because I appreciated it more. Because even though that it wasn't an actual match, it was a gimmick fight, what they were selling. Yeah. But Taker looked better in this than he had in a long time. Yeah. How soon would it be in a Taker fight over the past, let's say, 10 years, that Taker was on his back?
Yeah.
Taker wasn't used to being on his back. And this time he was only on his back for so long. And
did you also see during that match when he punched through the car window?
That was legit.
It was legit, and he had they actually they had to stop shooting. They said it took almost 8 hours to shoot that match.
Yeah,
because of that
injury. Yeah, unfortunately, that's not the first car window to claim an injury. You remember what Goldberg did back in the day during that spot against Kevin Nash?
Sure did.
And he almost bled out.
Yeah,
that almost killed him.
Yeah,
yeah. They've got to be very careful about those damn car windows. Sometimes they have breakaway glass set up for them. Sometimes they don't. You know how a car window breaks. It doesn't break like glass. It shatters, and you get the you get the web pattern break.
Right.
You get the web pattern break on the glass, so it's not meant to shatter.
Well, I would assume, being that it was at Hearst, that it was gimmick. That's what I would assume. It was gimmick glass.
It didn't look like it to me. I mean, it looked like glass.
The
way that it broke, because it looked like a little shard stuck in his arm, and I think that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's dangerous, man, because right here along your forearm, man, you got a shit ton of capillaries and veins and arteries, man. That's a gamble going through that. And honestly, most people punching through an actual car window, most people break every bone in their hand.
Right.
Actually trying to negotiate that. So
yeah.
But it was interesting seeing the different variations that happened throughout the match. How they had a good solo back and forth, and then the OC gets involved.
Yep. And
then that bullshit spot with the Druids, which I understood the irony behind it. It was still kind of dumb.
Right.
That was one of the parts I didn't like. My favorite part of the match was up on the roof of the shed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked that, and AJ took a very good-looking bump.
Yes.
And he fell into that little wooden box or pallet or whatever, but he took a very good bump because, when you take a bump outside, you don't bounce.
Yeah.
You become part of whatever you fell into.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with AJ, and that looked very good. And, of course, they had to sell the supernatural part, and everybody's like, oh, well, how could The Undertaker be behind AJ if he was in the grave? I'm like, well, how could The Undertaker levitate after he was put in the casket at the 1994, what was it, Survivor Series? Royal Rumble. At the 1994 Royal Rumble, after he's put in the casket, how could green smoke automatically come out of the casket? How could he levitate from the top of the Titantron when he was in there? Or how could he still be alive when the casket was set on fire with the casket match with Kane and all that good stuff? I mean, that's the supernatural stuff that, of course, the character sells. So what he did there is no more ridiculous than anything else that he's done throughout his career as The Undertaker.
Now, I tell you what, and I get it. I would have liked the Druids to maybe be like other workers, or maybe even like former workers that he's.
I would have liked to see them unmask, and they would be like this person and that person, or maybe people from like his past. It would have been really cool if it would have been the wrestlers that were involved when they interfered in the Royal Rumble match. Because I'm sure if you remember, a whole bunch of the locker room came out and kicked The Undertaker's match to help Yokozuna put him into the casket. It'd be cool if we saw people like that. Like, Jeff Jarrett was part of that. And there are a whole bunch of other wrestlers.
Bundy, Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, wouldn't it be cool if the ones that were still alive actually, were part of that, and they kind of ran that back again? I'm like, dude, that's cool.
And even better, have fucking Chuck Norris come walking down.
Oh God, I remember that. I was on the aisle, and I remember you actually see me on the aisle slapping his hand. I'm going, yes, yes, yes. You actually see me. Yeah. When Chuck Norris is walking down. I'll show you the footage. Me and my brother were there. I was 16 and he was 10, I believe. Yeah, he was 10 years old at the time. I was about to be 17, and I was on the aisle as Chuck Norris was walking down, because that, of course, was in San Antonio at the Freeman Coliseum. So when he was the special enforcer for that match, and I was right there in front of him when Chuck Norris did that spinning heel kick to Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah.
That was right in front of me. That I watched that, and I was amazed at how small Chuck Norris was.
Yeah.
He's not a tall guy, but boy, did I get a sense of how tall Taker was.
Yeah.
Ooh, man. I mean, Taker is no 6'10", 6'11".
Right.
He might be 6'9" in his boots, but he's walking around at a solid 6'7".
Yeah, that's
I'd
probably
say,
fair.
yeah, I'd say he's a solid 6'7". But when you're 16, you know, they fucking look huge. And then when you see fucking Yokozuna lumber past you down the aisle, Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, was he a big boy. And to have the kind of flexibility and athleticism for as big as he was, but then again, he was part of the Anoa'i family, and they were natural athletes.
Right.
Didn't matter the fact that he was 666 pounds, 665 pounds, and he could still move. Dude, he could do a thrust kick.
Yeah.
He could do a thrust kick, man. Somebody at 666 pounds should be like in pain just getting into the ring.
Should be bedridden.
They should know, because I've seen people try to, like, you know, like the bigger guys sometimes get into the ring that weren't in shape,
Right.
and it's almost physically harmful. They're like getting ow, just getting up to the fucking apron.
Yeah.
This guy's fucking running. I mean, not fast, but he's still running. I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah.
But no, that would have been cool. The end result for the Boneyard match, you know, I was happy. I actually said that it was kind of stupid, but now that I've watched it past, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad at all. I actually enjoyed it. There were a few things that I probably could have done without in it, but I enjoyed it for the most part. And then, of course, the Firefly Funhouse match. There were a bunch of people that weren't too happy about it. I loved seeing the different genres.
If you enjoy it for what it wasn't terrible.
No,
it really wasn't. A lot of people give it some shit that it really does. It's not really warranted. If you enjoy it for what it was entertaining. Like, oh my god, when they did the NWO bit and they had the Nitro set and he came out
and seeing fucking John Cena and the NWO strumming the NWO belt like Hogan did, I'm sorry, that was kind of cool. Because it makes you think, what if John Cena, ran the NWO through?
I think too. Another thing too, I was thinking about after we did the show was, especially for that part. I don't know what the age group is anymore for their average viewer for WWE, but
you see more adults than you would think.
Well, yeah, but I wonder. I wonder how many people would, connect that and it actually be meaningful. Like, they may know what WCW is, but say, like, somebody like you, somebody like me, we see that and we see the little mock-up set they had, and we saw the whole, the entrance and everything. Like, it hits a different tune with people like you and me because, like, we lived through that, right? Like, we were. It hits different, maybe.
I would agree with that in part, and the only reason I would agree with that in part is because the younger generation now has access to the WWE network.
Yeah, but I think it's different.
And they no. It'll obviously be different because there's a difference between watching it and living through it.
Yeah,
I mean, they didn't live through it. They didn't understand that. A lot of them weren't alive. I mean, there were a lot of people that are watching that did not live through the Attitude Era, and if they did, they were babies at the time. They were kids. They were little kids who probably couldn't have appreciated at the time. So they didn't live through the Monday Night Wars. They weren't around during the Attitude Era, and they weren't around when the business took the biggest jump as far as the demographics.
Right.
It had never been between ages 18 to 35 before.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because I still think that the biggest reason why the Attitude Era became, we have to thank, I think, Jerry Springer for that. I really think because the Attitude Era was basically just a long, extended Jerry Springer episode. Because Jerry Springer at the time, right before the Attitude Era started, was the hottest thing on TV. It was the hottest thing on TV. And I know, of course, there were certain people that were responsible from a writing perspective that were responsible for the Attitude Era. So they said, you know what? Why don't we just make this a extended version of the Jerry Springer show? And guess what? It worked. And it worked unbelievable. And we were treated to the most unique era in WWE history, and everybody wants it back. And I'm saying to myself, you can't. You can't. You can't recreate it. As much as you would want to, it's gone. Appreciate it for what it was. Watch it back through the WWE network, and you get to relive that. But if you try to run it back the way that the business is now, it would not only would it work, it would flop.
Yeah,
it wouldn't work. I mean, you can't go to the past, but you can't go back. You can't go back home. The old saying, you can never go back home because it isn't there. Perfect example with the Attitude Era, and all these wrestling fans that say, "Oh, I want to see this again. I'll see those." I mean, no, you don't. No, you don't. You know why? Because it's the same shit. You don't want to see a lot of your Hollywood movie favorites recreated, do you? I mean, look at all the flops of the recreations. Trying to redo past movies, and none of them have worked. None of them. I've never seen a recreate that has been as good and heralded as the first. Never. It's like when they tried to redo Blade Runner.
Oh, yeah.
I know, it's painful. It was painful, and it was too much.
I had such high hopes for that because I loved the first one, right? And
it's one of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time.
I think I don't even know if I've actually seen the entire second one. Like, I started watching it, I'm pretty sure I fell asleep. That's a shoot.
And that is a shoot. That's not too good that happened. That's not too good that happened. Another perfect example, the remake of Total Recall. Fucking Colin Farrell in that shit. Colin Farrell trying to recreate, in my opinion, one of the best sci-fi movies of the early 1990s with Arnold Schwarzenegger that had a exponential body count on top of that. I mean, how many times do you get to watch a sci-fi movie that involves a midget stripper stabbing the villain number 2 in the chest?
Right.
How many times do you get to see a Garbage Pail Kid come out of the chest of, out of somebody and, be the voice of reason in the movie? What do you want, Mr. Quaid? Start the reactor. Free Mars. Yes. And it looked like a Garbage Pail Kid. It looked like one of those Garbage Pail Kids, man. It was crazy. Honestly, that was Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger was a ride, and it was one hell of a ride. That Total Recall, I watched an hour of it, and I wanted to vomit. I wanted to hurl. I'm just like, man, it was just so bad. It was so bad. Stop fucking around with what we love and come up with some original motherfucking ideas. There's no point in running something back thinking it's going to be just as good, because guess what? It's a different time. It's a different mindset. And people are also PC as hell. You couldn't get away with what you did then now. No. Of course not. And that's, I think, sometimes what directors and producers kind of need to keep that in the front of their mind. You can't necessarily get away today with what you did then. So why bother? Why bother? There's a million ideas that haven't been utilized that I think that would actually make blockbuster movies. But yet, no, we have to go ahead and fuck with what you loved. I don't need you to take what I loved, repackage it, and fuck me up the ass with it. I don't need that. I don't want that. Leave it alone. Leave Britney alone. Leave it alone.
Your analogies are great, Jeff.
Oh, it's the method to my madness. What can I say? But yeah, man. Getting back on topic, man. Yeah, WrestleMania this year was surprising. There were some great moments. There were some WrestleMania moments, but there's something I want to touch on that I didn't even think about that happened during the Last Man Standing match.
Okay.
And apparently it got a lot of some of the WWE wrestlers and some of the people in the backstage kind of pissed off. And it was a scene in the gym where Randy Orton strung up.
They were making the Benoit reference.
They were tying it in. I didn't even see that.
No,
I didn't even see that.
Stretch, man.
And that wasn't what they were shooting for. Obviously, they have more respect than that, not to relive that. I mean, if
Right.
you decided to go ahead and come to that conclusion yourself, then that's fine. But that's not what they were shooting for.
Right.
Why would they?
Yeah.
Why would they? Why would they want to recreate that in any way?
Right.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't even want to make a reference towards that in any way, shape, or form. I mean, if that's the way it is, then that's the way it is. But that's not what they were shooting for. It wasn't.
Yeah, I read that too. That's a stretch, man. Like they're trying to give them shit for that. Like, if anybody honestly believes, like you said, if anybody really believes that's what they were going for, come on.
Well, then you missed the point. You missed the point. They were working with what they had. They weren't trying to recreate shit. They weren't trying. Yeah.
And guess what? If you want to look at this from a, I know it's pro wrestling, but there has to be a sense of, logical to it, right? Logical thinking. You're in a street fight, right? You're in a gym. What can I use that will look good and be believable? Well, you can't really fucking throw 40-pound weights at people because it's hard to fake that. I mean, they did do it once, but it looked weird.
Yeah, and it didn't look right. So you figure, what is going to help me gain leverage over my opponent?
Was there a lot of in gyms? Cables, cords?
Yeah, the idea of a fulcrum. Something to, temporarily disable somebody so that I can lay into them.
Yeah. It's stupid.
That's it. That's it. That's all that they were going for.
All it was.
Yeah.
That's all it was. And it kind of disappoints me that even like a lot of the boys and people, in the business were saying that. I can understand maybe, because the Dark Side of the Ring, they just released it a couple weeks ago. So
maybe that's what it was.
It's kind of fresh in people's brains.
Maybe that's what it was. I think that's really more of what it was, because the fact that was just recently done right before WrestleMania had, so it was still fresh in people's memories. So maybe it was the fact that it was fresh on the heels of that people got a little perturbed about it. And I think that's the only reason.
They need to stop being so damn sensitive. Seriously.
Well, I mean, it's over and it's done with. If the sister of woman is close to actually forgiving Chris Benoit for doing that, then you motherfuckers don't need to. Yeah. We don't need you to. How about this? If that's your opinion, that's fine, but we don't need to relive that.
Yeah.
That's the last thing that anybody wants. How do you think fucking Chris Benoit's kid felt about hearing that?
Right.
Think he wants to fucking hear it. And touching on that Dark Side of the Ring, I felt most sorry for the kid because he never asked for any of the shit that came his way. All the horrible things that people are saying, like he had something, like, oh yes, like he planned it, like he had something to do with it, right? That because that he happens to be his kid, that he's like demon seed now because that idea of, and some people even say, oh, I'm sure that you're going to do that to your family when you get older. I'm like, what a fucking horrible thing to say to a victim of that. He wasn't an enabler to this in any way. He was a fucking kid. He was a victim.
It's a shame, right? Because it sucks really bad for him because, he's stuck on both ends, as in like he's a victim in the sense of, he's had to deal with this. That was still his dad. That was still his stepmom. That was still his brother. He has to deal with that, right? And then he gets stuck in the fucking middle because he happens to look like his dad quite a bit.
Oh, quite a bit. Right? Talk about genetic resemblance.
Right, and then he wants to be in the business. So it's like people like
he'll never be in the WWE. Unfortunately, that door. It is because that they don't want to make that connection in any way. It's too fucking. And it sucks. Which I honestly believe AEW, when they're ready, will extend him an opportunity. You know why? Because there's no ugly past with AEW because AEW is so new.
Right.
And I think that he's going to get that opportunity when he's ready. And if he decides to wrestle like his father, then so be it. That's fine. Because when it comes down to it, for all these dumbass wrestling fans who say these horrible things about him, He may be his father. He may be his father's son. Yes. But that doesn't mean that he's going to do the same thing. It doesn't mean that he has that killer instinct inside him. And I'm going to tell you, for those of you who even kind of knock Chris for doing that, I mean, Chris wasn't himself when that was happening. Chris was not himself. I hate to say it, the death of Eddie Guerrero definitely was the beginning of the end for that situation, because number one, Chris was a extreme introvert, number one.
Yeah.
So he only had so many true friends. Right. And Eddie was the greatest friend that he could ever fucking ask for. I mean, he was basically his brother. They were basically family, his blood. And when you lose that, I mean, I can understand that just being, a descent into blackness, into madness, which unfortunately it was. And also, when you have that kind of trauma, it unlocks so much mentally that the problems, they multiply, and it just gets worse and worse. So unfortunately, it takes something like that to drive you off into the deep end. And I truly believe that that's what it was. It was the death of Eddie Guerrero that sent him spiraling down, and all these other problems that didn't seem like problems because you had such a good friend there for support. He didn't, his wife, unfortunately, and his kids weren't enough to keep him from, pulling himself back up. And that's unfortunate. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that happened. It's beyond unfortunate. I mean, Chris Benoit is one thing, but his wife and his youngest son as an innocent it's obviously the worst. Is obviously the worst. And then now he has to put up with all this shit and the terrible things that people say about him instead of actually, gaining support, instead of getting the support that he needs. Yeah. The support saying, something, we know it was, we know you had nothing to do with that. Right. And we know that, you're not going to be a killer in your own sense. You were a victim, and we're here for you. And that's what people should be doing for this kid. They should be reaching out and saying, something, man, it's the worst, but you're still here. You're still pushing forward, and you want to follow in your father's footsteps professionally. That's okay. Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. I mean, that's professionally. I can still appreciate Chris Benoit, what he did professionally.
Oh, 100%.
I can still appreciate what he did professionally, and I will appreciate what he did professionally. And if people don't like that, I don't give a fuck, because they figured that what he did erases everything. And I'm sorry, I'm still a wrestling fan, and I was still a fan of his, and I still am a fan of what he did professionally. I never knew the guy personally, and what he did personally was unforgivable in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, it was unforgivable. So there's that. But as far as professionally, he was one of the best. He really was. He really was one of the best. He was an unflinching professional.
Agree with you 1,000%. It's a shame because other than WWE Network, I'm sure generations to come, eventually, fuck man, they'll probably be lost. I mean, unless you know what to look for and you happen to stumble onto him, but I think it's a shame. I think his work is going to be.
It is, and unfortunately, people don't understand this. This seedy, dark underbelly of this business. But then again, any sports entity has this seedy, dark underbelly. You see it in football, you see it in basketball, you see it in baseball. They're bad apples, unfortunately, every now and then. And the bad apples surface to the everyday, mainstream media. And that happens. It happens in every single sport that there is. There's always somebody who, unfortunately is that bad apple. But, it also makes for good entertainment afterwards because, there is no such thing as bad press these days. It's just like the last I just saw the last one yesterday, the Dark Side of the Ring, and we were watching it on the Brawl for It All. The Brawl for All. And that was
that. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, it really was, because I really didn't think about I really didn't give it that perspective that you're putting brawling style bar fights in the hands of professional wrestlers, all because one piece of shit in the back of course, I'm talking about Bradshaw at the time, was saying, "Oh my God, I wish this were real. I could kick all of your all asses."
Yeah.
And he did pretty good in the brawl for it all until he got to Bart Gunn. And the damnedest thing about it is that God bless did I feel for Bart Gunn on through this, because nobody was counting on him to run the fucking tournament all the way to the end. It's funny that they actually were counting on Dr. Death, Steve Williams.
He got out his first fight, right? Didn't he lose the first fight?
Dude, he got bad. He got knocked out bad.
Yeah.
Really fun. He had multiple injuries. That ended his career, is what it did. And think about that. A bullshit fucking, boxing angle of all things to end your fucking career. Did the same for Bart Gunn. Bart was done after that because everybody thought that Bart was going to run something with Stone Cold, because that was the idea. The winner of that was supposed to get $75,000 and start running a storyline with Steve Austin, which at the time was the World Wrestling Federation champion.
Right.
And they had no fucking clue what to do with Bart. He won every and the worst thing that they could have done is what they did, is put the Brawl for All champion up against Butterbean. And they did that at WrestleMania 15, and Butterbean fucked him up. And why wouldn't Butterbean fuck him up? Butterbean was no professional boxer by any means. The guy was the haymaker of any kind of fights. And obviously, everybody knows Butterbean from his Tough Man competition.
Tough Man, the rough and rowdy shit.
The rough and rowdy shit, exactly.
Yeah.
Now the guy was not a technical boxer, but he was the haymaker. If he hit you, he'd knock you in the next century. And that's exactly what happened with fucking Bart Gunn. And after he got knocked out and embarrassed by Butterbean, that was it.
Bruce Pritchard said that was the worst. The Brawl for All was the worst decision he's ever made.
Well, it wasn't. It wasn't just him. It wasn't just him. It was what's his name as well.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Russo?
Yeah. Vince Russo. Vince Russo was the one that really put the bug in Vince's ear for the Brawl for All. He was the one that put the bug in there. And at the time, they thought it was a good idea because they liked the initial idea, which was who is the fucking toughest in the locker room.
Right.
But they didn't think about that these guys don't have the skill set for this.
Right.
And honestly, what really also hurt them were the legitimate takedowns.
Right.
Because a lot of these guys weren't trained to take a legitimate takedown from a 230, 240 pound plus human being.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the injuries took place with those takedowns. So many of them had like ACL tears, quad tears, because they couldn't defend against a legitimate takedown because they had no fucking idea how to do it. I mean, some of them did from their previous wrestling history, but it had been a long time since they had been in a takedown that wasn't on a work.
Yeah.
These weren't work. These were shoot takedowns. This was shoot fighting is what it was.
Yeah.
And it was barroom brawl shit. And now that I look at it, when I was younger, I thought maybe it was cool. But now that I look at it from the perspective of the ones who, made it happen, Jim Ross was right. It was a complete clusterfuck.
Yeah.
It was terrible. There was no positive ending. There was no positive ending to this. And no matter who ran it through. And there were a couple of people that they wanted. Who they wanted originally to win besides Dr. Death? They wanted the Godfather. They wanted.
I heard that. Yeah.
They wanted the Godfather to win through that because the Godfather was a legitimate badass.
Right.
He was a legitimate badass. And they were hoping Dan Severn would run that through, but Dan Severn fought one fight and then he got all this, back talk saying, something, this could really fuck with my fighting career. Yeah. So he was smart. After one fight, he got the fuck out of Dodge, and that's the best decision he probably ever made.
Do I saw I was at the Raw where it was Severn and Shamrock.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I mean, it was a wrestling match, but it was, I could say I saw Shamrock and Severin.
And Severin outside of the cage.
Yeah.
Outside of the UFC. Exactly. And that's pretty cool. And that's pretty cool, man, because I think, Shamrock definitely gravitated to the WWE way of life better than Dan Severn did.
Well, he had all that training because, a lot of people don't remember. Like, he was actually a pro wrestler before he even did anything.
Oh, yeah.
So, he at least, even coming from UFC, it wasn't like he was completely brand new to the sport. He knew how to bump. He knew all the baseline stuff. But no, I thought he took to it really well, man. I love.
Yeah, except for his promos. His promos were terrible.
Except the promos.
His promos. I'm gonna tell you, did he have the look? Did he have the crazy fucking, when he would lose it? Oh, dude, I love that. I love that. That makes for a good wrestler. But unfortunately, when he got on the microphone, he didn't know what the fuck he was doing. He didn't know how to pace himself properly on the microphone.
Mm.
And I just don't think that he had. I just don't think that he had the gift of gab. I mean, he's a good talker. Don't get me wrong. But as far as wrestling promos, I've never been a fan. I've never been a fan of his, especially when he had matches against The Rock.
Right.
The Rock would just put him under the bus because he just had that. In that sense, you know how it is, man. You either got it or you don't.
Well, you know what? I guess in his, I don't know, not necessarily in his defense, but because of his background, his skills anyway, he could almost get away with not being able to talk because he had that legitimate fighting background.
I don't know. I think he should have stayed silent.
Yeah. He should have just been like the silent killer type, silent crazy killer type, and and he had a decent run. It wasn't like he had a bad run. He had a decent run. He was
a tag team champion. He was an intercontinental champion. I mean, he was a European champion. So he didn't have a bad run in comparison to other guys that never really even held championships, but they were just there for filler. No, he had a great match against The Rock at WrestleMania.
His first match in WWE after he had come from the UFC was against Vader, which was also in Richmond.
Yep. It was in Richmond, Virginia. Oh, yeah.
That was the Cold Day in Hell pay-per-view where it was it was the first Taker and Stone Cold match in WWE.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Was that in your house?
It was in your house.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Another game. May 11th, 1997.
1997. That was a good year.
Yep.
There's some good stuff that happened. There was some good stuff happened between the end of 1996 and into 1997. I mean, obviously, the greatest thing that happened, in my opinion, in 1997 definitely has to be which we talked about on a previous episode of Loudmouth Fisticuffs, was the submission match between Steve Austin and Bret Hart.
Yes.
I still say best moment of 1997. And Stone Cold was actually talking on a I don't know if it was WWE sponsored, but it was an interview where they were giving props to the photographers. And there were so many wrestlers that were giving props to the photographers for the classic shots. And Steve Austin will always herald the bloody face shot when he was in the sharpshooter at WrestleMania 13. He's saying that is by far one of the most iconic photographs in the history of professional wrestling. And I absolutely agree. He still says that's his favorite to this day. He said that shot said everything that the match needed to say in one photograph. I think so. Talk about selling the pain, man. He had blood in between his teeth and everything like that. I mean, it was a great representation of what was happening during the match. Yeah. So, and those are the unsung heroes. The unsung heroes, like the photographers, the production, the ring crew, the ones who are able, and the ring crew, you want to talk about a production that is lickety split. That is probably the best live event production on the planet. Not too many people can compete with WWE because of their not only their track record, but they're one of the only live entertainment entities that have never had a break.
Yeah.
They have never had a break. They have been going strong 30, 40 plus years.
Yeah.
Not too many people can, have that claim to fame. And that's why it's gotten. Now, there was one thing on this year's WrestleMania that I was a little disappointed in, because I think they could have done a little bit. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more event production. I think they could have done a little bit more on the setup. I was looking around. I saw a whole bunch of empty spots or empty areas around that. I think they could have dressed it up a little bit more. I would have liked to have seen a few more video screens. I would have liked to have seen maybe some non-flammable pyro. And I don't know why they couldn't have done this. Why couldn't they have disassembled the ceiling fan just for those 2 nights?
Oh yeah, because a lot of people were commenting. It was kind of distracting to some people.
It was distracting. It made it kind of look like an indie show. I'm like, you couldn't have disassembled the ceiling fan for just one night, for just 2 nights.
Yeah, I would yeah, I'm with you on that.
I would have liked to have seen a little bit more production in-house. I mean, obviously, as far as the video production packages, everything was perfect, as it always is. So no problem there. But a little bit more in arena event production would have been nice. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more on their end. And I understand it's a small space. I understand that. But you could have done more, because WrestleMania, as far as WWE, is known for more. Is known for more. I understand space constraints. We weren't in 75,000, 80,000 seat arena this time around. But I think that they could have done a little bit more with the out front production.
Did you see where I think it was during the 5-way women's title match?
Mm-hmm.
There was a spot, and there was just enough of a delay. You could hear Michael Cole on comment. You could hear him like audibly, like from the desk, like, and not like the commentary audio. Like you could just hear him talking. Like you could hear him doing the commentary, but not like through his mic. You could hear it through, like one of the other cameras' mics picking him up, and it was really strange to hear it. That's how quiet it was in there.
No, I didn't. No, I can't say that I did. And I'll have to watch that back so that I can see that.
It was one of the pinfalls, and Michael Cole's going nuts, and you can hear him. You can hear it picked up over the regular camera mic or whatever over.
Oh, what it is, it's probably the headset mic for the cameraman, because you're tied in with you're usually tied in with everybody.
Yeah.
Because I know that for a fact, as being part of a production or any production, I usually can hear the directions from the truck. I can usually hear the commentators talking, and I can also hear the cameramen speaking in between one another. So no, I can definitely say that I know about hearing all the crosstalk and that usually gets drowned out 100%, because you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people that drown out that talk between. But you're absolutely right. If there's nobody there, you're picking up everything.
What do they go, Jeff? You're on in 3, 2.
No. There's no. Mine are simple. I hate countdowns. I hate fucking countdowns. I actually specifically ask them, all I need to know, this is all you need to say to me. And go, Jeff.
Go, Jeff.
That's it. That's all I want. I don't want a countdown. I don't want any of that bullshit. Those 3 words are all I need when it's time for me to go. Like, I'll get a standby. Standby. And go, Jeff. That's all I need.
You said like you can usually pick it up anyway because you can hear.
Well, if I don't have the IFB, because the IFB is not foolproof. There have been plenty of times that I've had problems with the battery pack or the earpiece, and it goes out. And the one thing that I've always learned is never to panic when you're in that situation.
Yeah.
If the IFB goes out, then it's all about having a line of sight to the commentator's desk, because the commentators are very good with giving you the finger point to go.
I've seen Wheelock do that at other shows. He's very good.
Yeah. Yeah, Sean is really good at cues.
Yeah.
And Sean, what happens is that we have a signal that we have when I'm in there. Sean pays attention a lot to me. So when I go like this, that means that the IFB's out. So we have our own little signal system. So when I do the little if everything's good, I give him like the tiny little thumbs up when I'm off camera.
Okay.
But most of the time, if that means the IFB is out and that I need to have visual cues from him moving forward for the rest of the show, or until I get the battery pack or earpiece fixed on my IFB.
Yeah, I was like, I've seen him do it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because usually the problem with it is I used to pay attention to the floor director, but sometimes the floor director can be out of sync. And sometimes I will get a cue before the commentators are done talking. And that's what I hate to do more than anything in this world, is to piggyback over or talk over the commentators or talk over anybody. I hate that. So I don't do it. So I said, Sean, I would rather pay attention to you because you're going to give me the official toss-up as opposed to the floor director.
Right.
See,
He'll bring you anyway, right?
So what happens is that this happens a lot. The floor director will cue me, and I'll still hear in my IFB. And now we're ready for the official introductions. Let's go to Jeff Houston. Before that even started, the floor director may have given me a cue. So I'm like, if anybody's going to give me the cue, it's going to be the commentator, because the commentator's doing the toss-up.
Right.
Is doing the toss to me. So that's why I always go on Sean's call as opposed to the floor director, because they're the ones that are doing the toss-up to me. So why wouldn't I go from that?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a whole system that's involved.
A little behind the scenes knowledge for people out there. That's interesting.
Oh, and any of the ring announcers that have done television know what I'm talking about, and they know the battle that comes from that. And there are so many other members of the production that want you to go off their cues. And I told them, I said, in the end, I'd rather have the commentator. I'd rather not have an IFB. The only reason that I feel that I need an IFB for, like, when I do bare knuckle, is if there's any kind of a delay. If there's any kind of a delay, if something's going on, or if we have a swing bout that's going to make TV. That to me is the most important reason for the IFB, because if we have a swing bout that ends up making TV, then obviously I'd like to say, okay, Jeff, we've got a change of plans. Please move your card around to this fight, as it will now make TV.
You remember UFC used to do that, and they don't do that anymore.
No, they've got everything. They've been doing it long enough to where it's like breathing. They don't need to have swing bouts, and they don't need to do swing bouts now that they've got prelims and pre-prelims that are scheduled so and so. So they have, and the fact that they've got them on multiple television platforms and pay-per-view platforms, they don't need to have that anymore.
Right.
They don't need to have that. We're still in our infancy in the grand scheme of things with bare knuckles. So that's why we're still going to see the possibility of swing bouts. And the greatest, the funny thing about it is, if you know your bare knuckle history, I'm going to go ahead and ask you a question, because you may know the answer to this. Okay. What is the greatest fight in bare knuckle history that was supposed to have been a swing bout?
That didn't air?
No, it was supposed to be, but it did. It was actually scheduled to be a swing bout, but it made it to TV. It actually, think about that. It was actually,
All right. So, all right. I might be getting these backwards. The two fights that come to mind, because I know they were something to do with that, was I know Tom and Diego, the first one, that might have been the opposite. They were supposed to be on TV, ended up not being on TV, but it was still a great fight. And I'm guessing the other one was Beltran Lopez, right?
It was. That's the one. They were originally supposed to be a swing bout, and we end up having fast knockouts, and we were way ahead of time. Honestly, so they got put on as the co-main event. Yeah, they got put on as the co-main event. Can you imagine Can you imagine that fight not airing? Can you imagine the only people that would have benefited from that at the time were the live audience there and not the pay-per-view audience watching?
That would have been a fucking travesty.
It would have been the epitome of a tragedy, because that was the fight that helped propel us.
Yeah.
Everybody always, people ask me, what was my favorite bare knuckle fight of all time? Still to this day, I'm still going to say Lopez Beltran won, because of what it meant to the sport at the beginning, that we were fortunate enough at the first event to have such a war of attrition.
Yeah.
And that it really did catapult us. Now, each fight that is considered, to be one of the greatest has its spot as the brand is developing.
Right.
Each one does. But to me, my favorite one was that, because, as I said before, it was the most unpredictable, wildest night of my career up to that point. And I had no idea what to expect. Nobody did. Nobody. The only person that may have had some idea of what was going to happen was Dave. Because Dave had run bare knuckle boxing before, just not state sanctioned. Not state sanctioned bare knuckle fighting. Right. So he may have had an idea, but I'm sure he didn't think that it was going to be that war that we saw. And that's why it's my favorite bare knuckle fight of all time as of right now. Because of what it meant to the industry, how it propelled us in the very first event, because sometimes first events are clusterfucks.
Right.
This one, I've seen so many first events that have been clusterfucks, and just, how much longer can this concept last? Not this one. This one had a rocket up its ass. It did. It propelled. I mean, it was incredible. It was incredible. The only fight that was a lackluster, and you know it as well as I do, was the main event. Was the main event, the Rico Rodriguez fight.
Oh, right.
That should not have been the main event. But the only reason it was is because we had to have a main event with a former UFC World Heavyweight Champion.
Sure.
And I understand the reasoning behind that. I absolutely do. But I didn't anticipate Rico to get on his bike the way he did. If there was ever a situation that I saw somebody say, "Please don't hit me in the face," that was the fight. And I'm not knocking on him. I mean, I'm trying not to, because I just, there's a reason he hasn't been invited back.
Right.
He fought the first one, and, he was happy to be back on pay-per-view and back in the spotlight. And I'm like, but it wasn't anything stellar.
Right.
It wasn't anything stellar. There were people on the card that have never attained the amount of success that you did in the UFC, and they did 100 times better than you did. They did 100 times. I mean, God, the winners of that night, the biggest winner was, of course, Lopez and Beltran, and a very, very close second right on their heels, as we all know, was Sam Shoemaker. What are you telling me? Okay.
No, but I tell you what, man, we're going to touch more. Actually, there's a couple things I want to talk about.
Okay.
And maybe we'll get to it on the next one. It'll give us something to look forward to. We're going to go into some bare knuckle stuff on episode Nueve. That's 9 for.
Oh.
Are you liking my Spanish lessons each time we do a different episode?
I don't like the fact that you feel that you have to explain it.
Well,
I think you should just say Nueve and not say that's for those who don't. Come on. Yeah. We are an integrated, fully civilized society. I'm pretty sure that the majority of
I don't know about fully civilized, but
all right, fine, not fully civilized. All right, well, we're civilized to a degree. I'm pretty sure the majority of those listening can put together what Nueve means.
I don't know, Jeff.
Yeah.
Not to.
You're going to put your foot. I'm
going to dig myself a hole. Let me stop.
Yeah, you are. You don't want those thumbs down, man. You want those thumbs up, people. Do not put us in a position to where they have to give thumbs down. Just don't do it, man. Don't do it.
I think they understand our sense of humor by now. Guys, we appreciate you so much. On that note, definitely share, like, subscribe. You know what to do. All the typical stuff. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere. CombatInsiders.com. Loudmouth Fisticuffs. I tell you what. We started this thing a few months ago, and we love it. We're having fun, and hopefully you're having just as much fun as we are. So we touching base on a little bit of everything. We run the gambit of pro wrestling, MMA, bare knuckle, and
we run the gamut of everything.
Everything,
Nothing is out of bounds here at Loudmouth Fisticuffs.
So
Nothing.
Hopefully you appreciate the variety as I know as much as we do. So on that note, we're gonna go ahead and call this one. We're probably about an hour and a half on this show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We did. And from my buddy over here, Mr. Jeff Houston, Mr. Live Worldwide, I am Joshua First, CombatInsiders.com. And that's it. That's all we got.
See you on the upside or the flip side or wherever fucking side you want to be on.